Hands behind your back now. That was the first thing I heard in the hallway that night, louder than my own heartbeat, louder than the little beep from my key fob opening the door to the condo I have spent my whole adult life paying for. And before I even turned around, before I saw the gun, I knew in my gut he was talking to me. And I also knew there was no way this was about crime. It was about who I was and what I looked like. I was standing in front of my own door, 2709 on the 27th floor of the Meridian in Chicago. Key fob still warm in my hand, thinking about leftover lasagna and my kid's volcano project, when this officer came out of the elevator like he was stepping into a raid, hand hovering over his holster, eyes locked on me like I was the problem the whole city had been waiting for. That's the part that still messes with me, how fast normal can flip. How you can be 2 seconds from home and suddenly you're the suspect in somebody else's movie. Let me back up a little so you see the whole picture the way I lived it. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm an FBI agent, Domestic Terrorism Unit, Chicago Field Office, 15 years and more briefings and crisis calls than I can even remember. And that day had been one of the long ones. 14 hours of threat matrices, grainy surveillance photos, and that constant low hum of what if in the back of your head. By the time I walked into the lobby, my shirt was stuck to my back. My gym bag felt like a sack of bricks, and all I wanted was a shower, a plate of food, and my son's voice not talking about danger for once. The Meridian lobby was doing its usual thing, marble floors, shining like they'd never seen a footprint eucalyptus in the air from those absurd diffusers the board thinks make us feel relaxed, soft jazz floating from hidden speakers, the kind of quiet that tricks you into thinking the world outside cannot touch you up here. I nodded to Jordan at the front desk, flashed my resident fob at the security gate out of habit. Even though he already knows me, stepped into the elevator, and for a moment it was just me, the mirror, and the dull ache in my shoulders. Halfway up, my phone lit up with a video call from home, and just like that, the whole day snapped back into perspective. Taylor's face filled the screen, hair in a messy bun, one of my old college hoodies hanging off her shoulder. That tired little smile she saves just for me. And before I could even say hi, she hit me with our usual line, "Drink some water, Marcus. I can hear your voice is dry." Malik shoved his way into the frame with a cardboard volcano glue still drying on the edges. "Dad, it erupts," he announced like he had just invented science, and we laughed. And for those 30 seconds, I wasn't Agent Reed. I was just Dad, almost home riding an elevator that has always meant safety to me. You know what I mean? That tiny pocket of normal in a crazy day. Then a notification slid across the top of the screen, internal FBI alert, threat level raised in the region. Remain vigilant. And I actually chuckled a little, said under my breath, "Even at home, huh?" If I had known how literal that was about to be, I would have kept that joke inside. At the exact same time, on the 10th floor in Unit 1003, a woman named Linda Carr was doing what she does most nights, which is watching the building's lobby cameras on her TV, like it's her personal crime channel. Linda is the kind of retired teacher you've probably met before, the one who calls herself vigilant, who says things like, "I just worry," while clutching her purse a little tighter around certain people who joined the building's volunteer safety committee and took that as a license to monitor everyone. The board gave her access to the camera feed years ago, and now it plays in her living room like background noise while the local news runs side by side with the usual stories. Crime in good neighborhoods, break-ins in fancy towers, blurry images of suspects that all end up blending into one shape in her mind. That night she saw me walk in. Black guy, athletic clothes, big duffel bag, sweat on my forehead from the day. And instead of seeing her neighbor of 5 years, the same man who fixed her kitchen sink when maintenance was backed up, the man who held the elevator when she came back from the grocery store, she saw a threat. She saw every story she had absorbed over years of selective fear sitting safe on her couch. When she called 911, her voice had that tight, righteous little tremor. "I'd like to report a suspicious person in my building." And the dispatcher did what they do, asked for details, and Linda leaned closer to the screen and said, "Black male, early 40s, large bag. He looks out of place like he doesn't belong here. He's moving like he knows how to get in." She left out all the context that would have ended that call on the spot. That she had only lived there 10 months, that I had lived there 5 years, that she had literally seen me open my own door multiple times, that my name was on the mailboxes and the resident list Jordan keeps at the desk. Fear doesn't like details, it likes stories. And the story she chose that night was stranger danger. No mention of my key fob, no mention of the concierge waving me in nothing real, just vibes and prejudice wrapped up as concern. Out on patrol a few blocks away, Officer Blake Turner heard that call come over the radio. Possible break-in at the Meridian. Caller reports unknown male black carrying a large bag appears out of place. And for a guy like him, that was all it took. If you pulled his record, which a lot of people did later, you'd see 12 complaints for racial profiling, 4 of them sustained. Yet somehow he was still out there with a badge and a gun and a habit of believing every scared white collar with a condo. He grew up in a family of cops in a suburb where the nice side of town all looked the same, and he carried those invisible lines into the city, never really unpacking them. That night, when the dispatcher started to give more info, he didn't ask if the concierge had checked the logs, didn't ask if the name matched. A resident didn't ask anything that might complicate the story he was already building. He just hit his lights, turned toward my building, and in his head, he put me in the role of the burglar he had been waiting to catch all week. Meanwhile, I stepped out of the elevator on 27, feeling that little breath of relief you get when you can smell your own hallway. You know, the familiar carpet, the weird abstract painting, the HOA paid too much for the muffled TV from 2705 where the couple argues about sports every night. I walked past the same doors. I walked past every evening, nodded at the motion sensor light at the end of the hall, stopped at 2709 and pressed my fob to the reader. It beeped soft and friendly, the ring turned green, the lock clicked and my shoulders finally dropped because that sound means home to me. I started to reach for the handle, already picturing Malik's volcano on the kitchen counter, and Taylor pretending not to have waited up when I heard the elevator doors behind me slide open again. That alone didn't mean anything. But then came the footsteps, heavy, fast, purposeful, and that command snapped across the space. Hands behind your back now, like a gunshot. I turned slowly, key fob still in my fingers, and there he was. Officer Turner rushing down the hallway as if he'd caught me in the middle of kicking in my own door. One hand hovering over his holster, the other already lifting a little like he was physically pushing the truth out of his way. Years of training hit me all at once, every briefing about de-escalation, every story from friends who didn't make it home. So I did what I tell other people to do. I kept my hands open, palms out, voice calm. Officer, I live here. I'm FBI Special Agent Marcus Reed. This is my unit, 2709. I held my badge where the hallway light could catch the hologram, the same motion I've done 1,000 times at crime scenes and checkpoints. He gave it one of those lazy, dismissive glances, not really seeing it, just registering something shiny, and snorted, "You know how easy those are to fake. I've seen plenty of these online," then stepped closer like his suspicion was more real than anything I could show him. Right beside us, there was a stainless steel mailbox panel with my name on it. Reed, right there in black letters, and a little screen above the door handle that still showed my recent fob use timestamp glowing in blue proof that I had just keyed into my own place. And yet, he didn't look at any of it. The wall intercom cracked to life over his shoulder, Jordan's voice coming through. "Officer, that's Mr. Reed. He's a resident. I've checked his ID. He lives in 2709. He comes through every day." But Turner slapped the button and killed the audio without a second thought, muttering something like, "Stay out of this," under his breath. Across the hall, my neighbor Hannah cracked her door open, hair-messy phone already in her hand because she heard the tone in his voice and knew this wasn't routine, and the camera started rolling almost immediately. At that moment, I was balancing 2 different kinds of fear in my chest. The professional fear that knows exactly how quickly things can go wrong when an agitated officer decides you're a threat, and the personal fear that hits when you're standing inches from the door of the place your kid sleeps wondering if you're going to make it back through it tonight. I could have argued harder. I could have flashed my badge louder, but there is a razor-thin line between clarifying and resisting when someone has already decided who you are, and I've seen too many people die on that line. So I did the only thing that made sense for survival. I turned around, laced my fingers behind my head, and said clearly for the camera and the body cam, "I am complying under duress, and this is racial profiling." He grabbed my wrists harder than he needed to metal cuffs clamping down on skin that still had the chill of outside air on it, and that click echoed down the hallway in a way I will never unhear. "You're being detained for suspicion of unlawful entry," he said, like you can unlawfully enter a home with your name literally on the door. The ride to the station was short on paper, maybe 10 minutes, but sitting in the back of that cruiser with my wrists burning and the city sliding past in broken reflections, it felt like an entire night. I watched the blocks roll by through the grate, the park where I taught Malik to ride his bike, the coffee shop where I used to meet Taylor when we were just 2 broke grad students, the grocery store where the cashier knows us by name, all those ordinary places that say, "You belong here." And suddenly I was looking at them like a stranger, like the whole city had voted me off the island and forgotten to tell me. Turner didn't say much up front, jaw-clenched eyes glued to the windshield, and the silence told me he was already writing his report in his head, already turning a neighbor coming home into a near-heroic response. When we walked into the precinct, fluorescent lights bleaching every color, chairs squeaking, printers whirring, that familiar institutional smell of stale coffee and paperwork. It should have felt like home turf because I work with cops all the time. I respect a lot of them. I know some damn good ones, but right then, I felt like evidence, not a person. Behind the desk, Sergeant Maria Santos was flipping through forms, barely glancing up at first, then doing a double take when she saw the cuffs and my face in the same frame. "Evening," she said carefully. "What's the charge?" Turner jumped in too fast. "Possible burglary at the Meridian, unknown male, large bag, sweating, claims to be FBI." She looked at me, saw the badge hanging at my hip, and you could see the gears turn. "Sir, what agency?" she asked. "FBI Chicago Field Office, Domestic Terrorism, 15 years. I answered, and the room shifted a little. She walked around the desk, asked Turner for my badge, turned it in her hands like someone who actually remembers their training, checked the seal, the hologram, the number picked up, the phone dialed, the contact printed on the back, and in under 2 minutes she had full confirmation my whole career sitting on the other end of that line. When she hung up, the apology in her eyes made me want to both hug her and walk out of there forever. She unlocked my cuffs herself, set a paper cup of water in front of me, and then laid into him, not shouting, but in that quiet, controlled way that hurts more. "You didn't check the building logs, you shut off the concierge, you ignored a neighbor, and you ignored his badge. That's not protocol, that's bias." The captain came out, they rolled the body cam footage, matched it against building video, and Hannah's clip from the hallway. And by the time they were done, the story Turner had tried to sell didn't stand a chance. Badge and gun on the table, desk duty pending investigation. Just like that, the man who thought he was about to be the hero of his own cop story became the cautionary tale. The twist, the part I didn't see coming, even with all my years inside the system, was how fast the outside world grabbed onto what happened in that hallway. By the time the Bureau put us in a hotel for a few nights and Taylor and I caught our breath, Hannah's video was all over social media, the whole sequence. Me at my door, the badge in the light, the doorman's voice getting cut off, the click of the cuffs, the elevator doors sliding shut on my face, looping with captions like, "He did everything right," and "Home is not a crime scene." Civil rights groups issued statements, people gathered outside the precinct with signs, the FBI sent a memo to the department making it clear this was not going to get quietly filed away, and my phone turned into a storm of missed calls and text messages. Malik saw the video on a tablet at his grandmother's house because kids always find what you try to hide, and that night he slept between us, one hand on my chest like he was making sure I didn't disappear. Yeah, that happened, and that part hurt more than the cuffs. We sued not because I was chasing a payday, but because I knew that without a legal fight, this would turn into another unfortunate incident that everyone moves past by the next news cycle. We went after the city, after Turner, after Linda, after the condo association for letting a resident play security with zero training. The discovery process was brutal in that way, where the truth lines up neatly, all the parts you wish were fuzzy, suddenly crystal clear. The 911 call where Linda said, "He doesn't look like he lives here," instead of describing anything actually criminal. The 12 prior profiling complaints against Turner that should have benched him years ago, the lack of any real policy for verifying residents before jumping to arrest. The city's lawyers saw the same pile we saw, and you could read the calculation in their eyes. A trial would be ugly, public, and very, very specific, so they started talking settlement. In the end, the money number was big on paper, more than $7 million across everything, and people love to focus on that part, but nobody writes headlines about how my kid flinches when he hears sirens now, or how my wife triple checks the door at night, or how I still tense up a little when the elevator dings behind me on my own floor. Money stabilizes your life. Sure, it pays for therapy and lawyers and a new security system Taylor insisted on, but it doesn't rewind a single second of that hallway. The part that felt closest to justice, at least for me, came later in rooms where cameras weren't always rolling. Inside the department, Santos and a captain named Liang pushed hard for real policy change, not just a press conference, and by the end of the year, the city had new rules on the books. Officers responding to residential calls have to verify residency with staff or electronic logs before putting hands on anyone. 3 sustained profiling complaints means automatic removal from street duty and mandatory review, and a public complaint database so patterns can't hide in file cabinets anymore. A year after those kicked in, false residential arrests dropped by over 40% in the city, which meant dozens of people I will never meet got to walk back into their homes without getting cuffed first, and I hang on to that number when the rest of it feels too heavy. And then there was the other moment, the one people always ask me about, the day I spoke in front of the city council and saw Turner again on the steps outside. In the chamber, I told them what I'm telling you in less detail, but with the same heart. I had the key, I had the badge, I had the concierge, I had my name on the door, and none of it mattered. Because when that officer stepped off the elevator and saw a black man with a bag, the story was already written in his head. If this can happen to me, what chance does the average black dad have walking down his own hallway? Afterward, as I was walking down the steps, someone called Agent Reed, and I turned and saw him. No uniform, no badge, just a tired-looking man in a too-big jacket, hands visible at his sides. He walked up, stopped a few feet away, and said, "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to tell you I was wrong. I should have checked the logs, listened to the concierge, listened to your neighbor, listened to you." His voice cracked, and for a second I saw the dad in him, the part of him that probably tells his own kid to tell the truth and do the right thing. I took a breath and told him what I had already told myself. This stopped being about you a long time ago. I survived that hallway, another person might not. What matters now is whether this city makes sure your habits don't live on in the next guy with a badge. There was no big reconciliation, no hug, no soft music, just two men standing in front of a building. Both of us will never see the same way again. And honestly, that felt more honest than any TV ending could. More than a year after it happened, I walked Malik down that same hallway again, grocery bags in one hand, his small fingers tucked into the other. Taylor behind us, complaining about HOA fees like she always does, and it almost felt normal. The ugly painting was still on the wall. The carpet still had that hotel smell. The red camera light still watched everything. But this time when the elevator opened, it was just a neighbor with a dog who nodded at us and held the door a little longer, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for another "hands behind your back" that never came. I pressed my fob to the reader, heard that same little beep that has meant home all these years, but now it carried this extra layer, a reminder of what almost got taken and what we fought to get back. Malik looked up at me and said, "Dad, are people still talking about what happened to you?" And I told him, "Yeah, some of them are." And he shrugged and said, "Good," like it was the most obvious thing in the world, then ran inside to make his volcano erupt all over the kitchen counter. Life doesn't snap back after something like this, it just reshapes itself, one hallway, one door, one conversation at a time. So that's my story, the short version of a long year, and now I want to hear from you, because this isn't just about one cop or one neighbor or one building in Chicago, it's about every place where someone decides who belongs based on a 3-second glance. Do you think what I got was justice or just a big check to keep the city out of a trial? What would accountability look like to you if you were sitting on that jury, and have you ever seen or lived a moment where someone was treated like they didn't belong in a space they had every right to be in? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Call me out if you disagree. Share your own story, if you've got one. And if you believe home should never feel like a crime scene hit, like share this video with someone who still says it's just a misunderstanding. And subscribe so more people hear stories like this and maybe think twice before they turn their fears into a phone call.